It was 6 seconds. 6 seconds that no one heard until now. A folder, untouched for years. A tape, labeled in fading ink. Dust thick enough to hold the light. The reel turns. Static hums. Something moves in the silence, almost imperceptible. A fragment of sound. Not a voice, not a name. Just a trace. And yet, that trace had waited. Hidden, ignored, small. Yet it shifts everything we thought we knew. Hands linger on the paper, fingers brush dust. The room is quiet enough to hear it breathe. The waveform jumps, flickers, disappears. A shadow of meaning passes, too little to explain, too much to ignore. Everything you remember about this case begins here. She vanished, no note, no call, no trace left behind. Days became weeks, weeks became months. The trail ended before it began. A voicemail exists, 6 seconds of sound. On it, a place is named, a town that does not appear on any map. Not in records, not in memory. Yet it is there, spoken clearly, with a certainty that does not belong to fiction. For decades, the family searched. They followed leads, questioned witnesses, traced rumors. They were never far from answers, yet always just beyond them. The timeline you will see here was reconstructed from police records, archived media, and family testimony. The questions remain. How does someone disappear without leaving a trace? Why does a message reference a town that does not exist? How can a family search for decades, guided by fragments, and never reach the truth? Every frame, every document, every recording holds part of the answer. Yet none of it arrives where you expect. Visual map stops zooming, tape recorder sits in shadow, newspaper headlines rustle slightly in a breeze. Quiet pause. She rose early, coffee first, black, always in the same cup. She left the cup by the sink when she went to work. Shoes lined the doorway, the left slightly ahead of the right, as if paused mid-step. Her desk held a notebook, pages turned unevenly. One page stopped mid-sentence, words unfinished, ideas left waiting. A pen rested across the lines. In the bedroom, small items remained in their places. A sweater folded on the chair, a pair of socks on the floor, jewelry in its box. Nothing moved, nothing missing, nothing disturbed. Meals were planned, groceries bought, calendars marked with errands and appointments. One date circled, empty. Nothing had been added or removed after she disappeared. Her routine had weight in its ordinariness. Laundry, bills, the hum of the refrigerator. The refrigerator door still opened, revealing food purchased but never eaten. Family spaces reflected her presence. The living room couch bore the indentation she left every evening. Chairs at the table waited. One was always empty. The absence was visible, but quiet, almost ordinary. Her plans were simple. Work, a visit to a friend, a trip she had mentioned once in passing. They were written down, marked, and never realized. The page remained untouched by circumstance. Objects held her shape: shoes, notebooks, sweater. They marked where she had been. They did not explain where she went. Time had moved. The apartment remained. Nothing else had. 08 a.m. She leaves her apartment. Doors locked. Lights off. No one reports seeing her leave. 8:45 a.m. She calls her workplace. Standard check-in. Call duration, 2 minutes. No notes indicate anything unusual. 09:03 a.m. A neighbor reports hearing the front door close. Confirms no one enters afterward. The report notes routine sound. 17 a.m. Phone pinged near a main street several blocks from her usual route. Location confirmed by carrier logs. No eyewitnesses. 23 a.m. A voicemail is left on her phone. Duration, 6 seconds. Timing aligns with the location ping. Content is not transcribed. Fragmentary metadata indicates background noise. 9:45 a.m. Security camera at a nearby cafe records a figure passing by. Clothing matches her description. Camera angle does not confirm identity. Timestamp unclear. 10:02 a.m. First report of a missing person filed by her workplace. Language in the report is vague. Not at usual location. Status unknown. 10:27 a.m. Phone shows last network activity. No calls, no texts, no movement beyond previously logged location. 10:45 a.m. A geographic anomaly appears in logs. The town name is referenced in the voicemail metadata. The town does not exist in official records. 11:10 a.m. onward, police begin tracing routes, questioning witnesses. Files note conflicting statements. One witness recalls seeing someone matching her description, another denies it. The sequence of events is clear in parts. The gaps are visible in others. What is known? Her departure. Phone records, a brief voicemail, a path mapped by digital traces. What is not known? her location after 9:45 a.m. The meaning of the 6-second voicemail. The town referenced. Conflicting witness accounts. Calls were made. Messages left. People waited by phones that did not ring. Numbers dialed repeatedly, sometimes in sequence, sometimes at random. Flyers were printed. Flyers were posted, handed to neighbors, taped to poles, pinned to bulletin boards. Their edges curled over days. Volunteers moved in lines across fields and streets. Feet followed paths traced by maps. Hands brushed over undergrowth. Eyes scanned in silence. Police assembled files. Reports were stamped, logged, placed in binders. Each note reflected observations, not conclusions. Records noted times, locations, and contacts. Neighbors spoke to each other. Some remembered seeing a figure. Others remembered nothing. One described a sound, footstep, or a car engine, just before the voicemail timestamp. It did not match any official record. Time stretched. Days passed in repetitions of calls, checks, walks, and reports. Actions continued. No clear answers emerged. The family visited locations repeatedly. Officers returned to the same streets. Volunteers retraced lines across fields. Flyers remained. Phones remained silent. Decisions were made again and again. Search areas were expanded. Patrols assigned. Leads documented. Nothing resolved. He appeared in records and statements intermittently. Visits noted at odd hours. Conversations logged briefly. Times recorded, but context left blank. At home, the house remained organized. Doors locked. Curtains drawn. Steps followed the same paths. Lights switched on and off on a schedule. Mail collected in sequence. Photographs in the living room had faces cropped or turned away. Some images displayed events he attended. Others only suggested presence. Patterns repeated. Files were stacked in piles on a desk. Most remained unopened. Outside, the yard was maintained. Objects returned to exact positions. Sounds of a car starting, stopping, or idling noted without follow-up. He interacted with neighbors predictably. Encounters were brief. Words exchanged, then silence. A door opened, then closed. Windows left untouched. The timeline shows his presence, yet gaps remain. Nothing confirms how or why he connected to other events. Observation alone notes repetition, order, and isolation. Consider what is recorded. Consider what is absent. The patterns are visible. Their purpose is not. Years of routine left traces, but gaps remained. Memories faltered. Dates did not align. Names were repeated or omitted. Each detail examined revealed another layer of uncertainty. Documents were gathered, spread across the table. Notes on the disappearance. Newspaper clippings, phone records, maps. One folder held inconsistencies. Locations shifted, times uncertain. The investigation became private. Nights spent at a laptop, tracing paths and signals. Fingers paused over the keyboard. Tabs opened, closed, reopened. Patterns suggested themselves, then dissolved. Old habits were checked, calls retraced. Streets walked again. Every step measured against a memory that no longer felt complete. A cassette tape was retrieved, label written in fading ink. Dust brushed away. Reel turned over slowly. Finger pressed lightly against its edge. Pause. Silence. Then a detail emerged, a voicemail. 6 seconds. Short. Unexplained. Alone in the recording. The moment lingered. The weight of it pressed quietly, without sound, without clarity. Hands reached across the table. Paused. Fingers touched, then withdrew. Movements careful, deliberate. Objects were placed on the table. A sweater folded, a notebook passed. Photos set side by side, faces aligned, not perfectly, but close enough to notice patterns. Chairs remained empty until someone moved. Then another. No one chose the same seat twice. Feet shifted, eyes traced familiar lines. Names were spoken, repeated, corrected. One voice followed another. The room was quiet. Pauses filled the space. Items from the past rested where they had been stored. A pen returned to a notebook. Shoes placed at a doorway. Nothing altered, nothing removed. Time passed slowly. Conversations circled. Details were compared. Some aligned, some did not. Gaps remained. Hands touched again. A pause. Then separated. The air held only what was present. Movement, objects, faces. Testimony began at 9 a.m. Witnesses spoke in turn. Statements recorded, questions asked, answers noted. Documents were introduced. Dates, phone logs, and photographs read aloud. Each page referenced in sequence. Observers followed silently. The judge's hands rested on the desk. Papers shifted, gavel remained unused. Proceedings continued at measured pace. Cross-examinations took place. Contradictions noted. Clarifications requested. Records reflect the exchanges without interpretation. Verdict delivered at 04:22 p.m. Guilty on select counts, not guilty on others. Sentencing scheduled for a later date. All actions documented. The victim was present, observed, no gestures recorded, no statements beyond procedural requirements. Justice was enacted in part. Other questions remained unanswered. Proceedings concluded as noted in the official record. The voicemail lasted 6 seconds. Within it, a place was named. A town that does not appear on maps, in records, or in memory. It was a small community that existed only briefly, annexed, renamed, or erased over time. The voice spoke of it as if it still stood. Life continued around the absence. Files remained untouched. Photos rested in their frames. Shoes by the doorway stayed in place. The tape sits on a shelf quiet. Its presence marks what was and what remains uncertain. Questions endure. Patterns can be traced. Gaps can be noted. The story persists in these fragments. Observation continues where certainty ends.